Hello guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use every single redstone component that is in Minecraft as of 1.20. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so let's start simple and get more complex. So the first component here we have is redstone dust. So what redstone dust does is it transmits a signal over distances like a wire. Now it has multiple things. So redstone dust in this form will power this block, this block, this block, and this block. But in this form, it only powers this block. So the next component that we have is the redstone torch. It's essentially just a current. It just outputs redstone. Now the interesting thing with a redstone torch is if you have some redstone and a torch, and if you power a torch, if you power a torch by using a signal, you can do this. So essentially you can have these two things, where if you have two redstone torches and they power each other, they will burn out. It's kind of hard to do, and you have to attach it directly to a power source. So levers won't work. You have to attach it directly to a power source like a redstone block. Okay, so the next component is a redstone repeater. Now because redstone goes only 16 blocks while powering stuff, it doesn't go any further. A repeater has two uses. You can use it to power redstone farther. It extends the signal by another 16 blocks, and what a redstone repeater does is it also delays the signal. So 1 tick is 1 in-game tick, 2 is 2 in-game ticks. You can see there's a little delay. 3 is 3 in-game ticks, and 4 is the maximum number of ticks. Now these can be used to make clocks by assembling something like this. So you can have multiple clocks really fast, and then you finally have very slow. Okay, so the next thing that we have is called a comparator. Most people don't really understand what a comparator does. Now if I set to subtract it, the output will be 5, since 13 minus 8 equals 5. So that's one of the comparator's functions. Another one of the comparator's functions is it can read the number of items in a chest. So if I do this, it outputs a certain signal strength, but if I input a lot more stuff, it will keep increasing the signal strength to eventually light up this lamp. That's about all the comparator does. Next up is the unsung hero of redstones, the target blocks. If you have a row of pistons like this, and if you place redstone right behind them and activate, they won't power. However, if you do this instead, they do power. And this is because the special thing of the target block is it redirects redstone wire into it, which pistons don't do. They don't redirect redstone wire into them. So the target block just redirects redstone wire into it. Okay, so there we go. We have the lever. This outputs a redstone signal that's toggleable on, off. And then we have the button, which outputs a redstone signal for a set amount of time. So like this. And actually, the time that they're on actually changes using different buttons. And then we have pressure plates, which are activated by redstone wire. And then we have weighted pressure plates, which outputs more signal strength the more items you put onto it. Next up, we have the skulk catalyst, which essentially detects noise, which is very useful for a player detector. And then they added the calibrated skulk catalyst, which here I'll set it up. So you have to input a different number so if I want it to be an output of 6, so you have different ones. So I'll put the list of what each number does. I can't remember which one it does, but you put a different number in a lectern on a book, and then it's only activated by some things. Okay, so I use 6 as an example, and for 6, a mob dying. So if I kill this villager, it activates the skulk sensor. So that's what the calibrated skulk sensor does. Okay, next up on the list is the tripwire hook. Nobody actually uses these, but essentially all they do is you have a wire and a redstone output, and essentially when you trip the wire, the redstone gets tripped. Okay, now we have the lectern. This is how a calibrated skulk sensor reads it. So you put the number in, and it will read it via which one it is. Here I'll put the what each number does again up on the screen. And that's about what the lectern does redstone wise. Then we have the daylight sensor. Daylight sensor is really interesting since it'll sense daylight and they can invert it to sense if it's not daylight. The redstone daylight sensor is pretty simple. Next up is the lightning rod. And now that if this is struck by lightning, it outputs a redstone signal like that. So now we have the pistons. We have the piston, sticky piston, slime block, and honey block. These are very fun. So essentially the piston, here we go, let's start with the piston. This piston, you power it, does this. Sticky piston is very similar. You do this, except it pulls blocks back and forth. So this is how a simple jeb door would be made, and they're made like this. And then it's literally this. And this is this little thing called quasi-connectivity. So that's how that works. And so what quasi-connectivity does is, so essentially, when Nacho's making the door, instead of saying that it is 1 block tall, use the part of the door's code, so it kind of registers at 2 blocks tall. So that's how you can make doors like a jeb door. Here, I'll make one real quick. So here's a jeb door. The redstone looks like this, and then you have the pistons like this. They're all sticky pistons. So what it does is, instead of having a gap in the door like you would with a normal piston door, it's flush with the wall. And these are very cool, and I love to use them for secret bases and stuff. Now, if a sticky piston gets 0 ticked, like this, here I'll remove it, so it gets 0 ticked. So I 0 tick a piston. You can do this pretty easily by putting a redstone component and breaking it really fast. So like if I put down this like redstone component, like a redstone block, here's another way to do it, is you put down a redstone block here, and it 0 ticks, and that makes the sticky pistons spit out its block. Now, this is how flying machines mainly work, is so what slime blocks do is, whereas if we have normal blocks, if I power this piston, it only pushes 1, whereas slime blocks do this. Again, with the 0 ticking. Now the cool thing is, if you have stuff like a door, 10 by 10 door, and it's right next to each other, you don't want them sticking together. So what you can do is I can have this. So let's set this up real quick. And then you can have honey blocks instead, and slime blocks. So each of these will only power individually. Whereas if these were slime blocks, it would kind of do this, which is kind of cursed to see. Now let's go into a hopper. Hoppers, so they essentially can take items from here, so if I drop an item, it'll go through this hopper pipeline into here. Now the thing is, if I have a hopper here, chain here, but the chest is like up here, hoppers can't go upwards since they can only go down or sideways. So that's where the mighty dropper comes in. So essentially what the dropper does is it drops an item into this. So I essentially just have upwards facing pistons. So if I drop in a hopper, it'll go into here, into here. Now it drops into this one, which powers this, which drops into this. And then if I do it one more time, it drops into this. So you can essentially have a vertical redstone. So this is how you'd make a item column in the nether, since you can't have water in the nether and can't use bubble columns. Now a chests are pretty cool since they can store items, but the thing is chests, if I have a block above it, you can't open it. So, and the unique thing about barrels is if I have a block over it, or behind it, or anywhere, I can still open it. Now the chiseled bookshelf. You can store books in these, and somehow use a comparator to make a secret door. It's really complicated. You should probably go look up an actual tutorial for these since they're so darn complicated. That's for some of my favorite blocks. The furnace, it smelts items, so it's not really that much of a redstone component. Now a trap chest. This looks pretty darn similar to a normal chest, except trap chest is pretty interesting because, there we go. When you open it, outputs a redstone signal. And this can be used to blow up people that you don't want opening your chest. So we have the jukebox. This plays music, and that's about all it does. You can use comparators to detect when it is. And then the note block. This one is actually pretty cool. This also redirects redstone, I think. Here, let me check. I just run a redstone line. Well, jukeboxes can be powered by redstone, and they're used a lot in redstone to make chains. So here's the awesome, one of my favorite redstone blocks. It's an observer. So this essentially observes when the block in front of it changes. Here, I'll have a piston so you can see it. It observes when the block in front of it changes, or when the state of a block changes. So not like when a piston opens, but like when I have a composter, and then if I fill it with a natural resource, here, let me find one, like a flower, whenever I change the state of the observed composter, it's a different signal, and a comparator can also read that. Next up is the composter. You can fill it to different levels, have different outputs and a comparator. Again, redstoners use this a lot. And then we have the cauldron. This is quite similar to the composter, except it uses water. Then we have the rails. All 4 rail types. So minecart. So essentially, what these do is a minecart goes on them, and that happens. Now with the powered rail, the minecarts go on it, it will make it keep going. So like if I have a minecart and I push it, it'll actually accelerate. Then the detector rail is actually used in a lot of redstone. So if I put it on this, now the rail's out putting a signal and powering these rails. So these are called activator rails. So what they do is they force a player, they shake the minecart and force any entity to get out of it. Okay, so then there's minecart hoppers. These are used a lot in farms, since if I have a normal hopper, so if I okay, let's set up the same setup with a hopper and then a minecart hopper. So if I have a hopper here, and if I throw an item, it stays here. But with a minecart hopper, it can actually pick up items through blocks. Since it's an entity, that's how it does that. Now the chest minecart, it's exactly what it says. It's a chest with it's a minecart with a chest in it. Very simple. Okay, so now we have the furnace with minecart. This is essentially a budget version of powered rails. Since powered rails are kind of expensive, so if you have the furnace minecart and then put coal in it, it'll go. It's kind of slow, but it's like a cheaper version of a minecart. And then here's one of some people's favorite block in the whole game, or one of the. It's called the TNT minecart. And why this is kind of dangerous is it's essentially a TNT. Now here's some special things. So if you have this rail track, and then if you have this activator rail, and then if you power it, so then if I power it, if I have this, it'll light like that, like a normal TNT. Okay, but that's the funny thing, is if that doesn't happen, like this, oh shoot, crud. It just goes, it hits something anyway, it explodes. Now the funny thing is, people abuse the heck out of this, so if they place a lot of minecarts, like right here I have 159, oh shoot, now if you hit something, they all detonate at once, creating a massive explosion. That's why I wanted to go sideways for that, since look how big that explosion is. So these things can be insanely deadly if you're unlucky enough to be right next to one. Now here's another really cool item. It's the boat with chest, and the funny thing is, because of its size, if I put an item in here, all 4 of these hoppers will take from it, which means faster hopper unloading. Then we have doors, and their trapdoor counterparts. These ones can just be opened, whereas these ones can't. They require a redstone signal to open, and they're also stronger. They're also more expensive. Alright, so we're down to the last few. So we have the fence gate. Pretty self-explanatory, it's a gate. Then we have TNT. It's like a TNT minecart without the minecart, and can't explode instantly. And the redstone lamp, which I've already actually used. These can, another functionality where if they're powered, people create these massive computers and use them as screens to power them. They're the good old bell, which is loud, but you can also use it as an alarm system. Since if you have a hopper clock, like the one that I have over here, it can get quite loud quite fast. My volume turned down for you guys. Now the dripleaf. I guess you can't place this on sandstone, you have to place it on, I think you have to place it on moss. Let's get some moss. And the cool thing about this dripleaf is that if you stand on it, you fall. And that, so you can make this to have hidden disappearing floors, since you can cover it with a carpet, and then when a player walks on it, they fall. It also works with items too. Now down to our last few, there's an armor stand. These don't do a ton. They're used for like armor holders, so they're not that interesting. And then we have redstone ore. The thing is, when you interact with this, it starts glowing, which can be detected by an observer, and you can use that to make like secret dynamite. But that is all of the redstone components that are in Minecraft as of 1.20. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.